Hello, friends. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for setting aside an hour to join our discussion today on a topic of how and when to migrate your Workday tenant to the public cloud. We're very happy to have Workday and ERPA jointly presenting on this important information. Some housekeeping matters before we jump in. All of your microphones have been muted for this session until we get to the live Q&A at the end. However, don't hold on to your questions until then. We have our experts ready to engage with you in the chat. It's available for you to type in your questions or your comments, and we'll be monitoring it as you do. Near the end of our time today, I'll be dropping a link for you to register for our next big webinar coming up 2 weeks from today that hundreds of you have found helpful in the past, and already 325 of you have registered for already, and it's all about the upcoming Workday release. We'd love for you to register for that today, even before you log off of this webinar. And then finally, following today's discussion, a very brief 4-question survey is going to hit your inbox, and we'd love for you to take 60 seconds to let us know what you think about this webinar and more. And with that, Brad, let me turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you to all of our attendees today who are taking the time to spend with us here on this nice afternoon for me by about 2 minutes. My name is Brad Kovacic, and my role at Workday is the director of our Southeast region, one of a few actually as Workday continues to grow. We focus on our medium enterprise customer base in the diversified industries segment. My team of AEs looks after, I think we're about up to 85 Workday customers throughout the greater SEC states, as I like to refer to them as, since we're only a couple days away from college football season. I've been at Workday for 6 years, and before this, I actually managed a company that had a large systems integrator consulting division who focused on migrating legacy workloads over to public and private cloud infrastructure. So that was my life before coming to Workday. And since I've been here and running the Southeast team, we've had so many of our customers ask us about where this migration could and should fit in their Workday roadmap alongside future functionality adoption. And the answer to that is, well, it depends. And so that's why we decided it'd be a great idea to have this session today, invite a lot of customers to it, and we plan to dive deeper into that as we get through this next hour. With that said, I'm happy to hand the mic over to our friend Human, who runs the Workday practice at our partner ERPA, and I hope to see many, if not all of you at Rising in just a few short weeks. Human?
Thank you, Brad, and welcome to everybody. We really appreciate the time you're giving us so we can share our story. As Brad alluded, I lead our Workday practice. My name is Human Iman. I've been at ERPA for 2.5 years, been in the Workday ecosystem since 2010, so I've seen a lot of the growth that we've all experienced, and it's really exciting to talk about this topic of the migration from your current cloud to the public cloud. Today, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little perspective about ERPA's Workday practice before we talk about our story and our journey. So from a Workday perspective, ERPA, as a Workday certified partner that is focused on whether you choose to implement Workday as a net new customer, or if you have just gone live on Workday and potentially are looking at optimizing your payroll, finance, and additional systems that you went live with, we have solutions for that. And by the way, if you just went live on Workday, chances are the AWS migration is not the first topic you want to think about, and there are many more exciting things to think about optimizing than just you can put this off till later. We have, of course, managed services, as you would imagine, and the typical optimization and the really exciting extend practice that's been growing and creating unique applications that solve unique problems of yours. And then, of course, this private to AWS migration cloud is something that has got a lot of momentum, and we've been speaking and engaging with several of our customers and talking to new customers about. Our Workday practice is made up of 60 plus certified resources. On average, they have close to 5 certifications, 4.4 to be exact. We're really proud of the tenure our practice has, 7.5 years. What that means is cross-functional knowledge. So if a customer asks the questions, we know what the impact will be downstream to make sure we provide the right solution. That's what really we invest in, to make sure we have the expertise to provide you all answers to any question that comes up while thinking about the future. And then, of course, an average person at ERPA in our Workday practice has got 20 plus implementations, so they are very familiar with the tenant approach, migrations, testing, and everything that happens before you're moving to a go live and a production tenant. Then next, what I kind of want to tell you a little bit about is why our perspective matters in this manner that we're speaking about another cloud migration here. You just went on Workday potentially, or you've been on Workday. We also are on Workday. We use Workday for HCM, payroll, finance. We happen to have a lot of projects. So our projects PSA is actually live. We use time tracking. So our consultants will go ahead and put every hours in there. Performance reviews, payroll, and expenses. Everything is done through Workday. I have dashboards that helps me plan, analyze, and really execute in the vision that we have for managing P&L and closing books and so forth, all done in Workday. Naturally, we have a lot of integrations to third-party systems. So that's a relevance that we're going to talk about in terms of how, when we migrated, what our story looked like. Besides being a Workday partner, we're also an AWS partner. And I don't expect anybody to read this, but right there when it says AWS underneath the partner, the fine print says a migration competency partner. So we've gone through the audit and acceptance and compliance process to make sure we are considered a migration partner to AWS, which means we've been doing this, as Brad alluded, there are all sorts of opportunities to go ahead and migrate data loads from on-premise and different solutions to AWS data centers that optimizes and improves compliance. And we were in that business. So naturally, when we talked to Workday a couple of years ago, we were selected as one of the 6 partners that's going to help if customers choose to rely on a partner. So we've been heavily engaged in this. And of course, our lessons learned and our story. I'm sure some people, you wouldn't be on this call if you didn't have some curiosity. So we're going to share how curious we were and how our questions were answered with you. And most importantly, what are we looking at once we migrated and some of the exciting possibilities that exist post-migration. It's been 9 months for us since last October when we migrated, and this has been an exciting journey for us. But before we talk about our story, we're privileged and honored to have Francesca Bergsman, who actually oversees the global go-to-market strategy for the public cloud at Workday, and works with AWS and GCP Google, the 2 main partners that Workday has selected. The Google Cloud and the AWS Cloud are the options that we're all talking about. And I know we have an AWS partnership. I'm focused on AWS, but you have a choice. So I'm going to pass it on to Francesca to tell you some of the benefits before we share our story.
Thank you, Human. I'm really thrilled to be here talking about our Workday strategy when it comes to public cloud. It's something that we've been partnering with AWS for over 10 years. And last year is really once we started being focused on our public cloud strategy. So as of last year, our public cloud is the preferred deployment option of Workday. We work with AWS as one of our key partners in this endeavor. And so we deploy all of our net new customers directly onto public cloud going forward, as well as we're on this path to migrate all of our existing customers who are on Workday private cloud today over to public cloud. So as I mentioned, AWS is a key partner for us in this migration strategy that we have, our public cloud strategy. And with AWS, it's available globally. So we have 5 different regions that Workday on AWS is available globally for our customers. This covers Australia, Canada, Germany, Singapore, and the United States. And over time, we plan to add additional locations. And that's just exciting as a result of our partnership to keep investing in what we're doing together. And the reason why we keep focusing on this on the next slide is we talk about the public cloud benefits for customers. And there are 4 key ones. The first one is user interface zero downtime. This is probably the most talked about benefit for our customers because essentially the user experience is zero downtime during the weekly and monthly maintenance windows. So people will still be able to log into Workday where, if they're still on private cloud during these weekly and monthly maintenance windows, you can't log into Workday at those points in time. So having this available through the public cloud is critical, a very big benefit for our customers. And that's the one we talk about the most. But there are a couple more benefits. One is regional maintenance windows. that would be based on the local schedule of the deployment region of the customer. So customers are no longer tied to specific time zones, such as, if you're on Workday Private Cloud, there's California and Dublin. And then for our customers who are not located in the US that require their data to be hosted in a regional data center for compliance or other reasons, now they have these regional appropriate maintenance windows. Now, from a regulatory compliance standpoint, benefit. Amazon on a regulated environment has already gone through all of the hoops from a regulatory compliance standpoint. So it shortens the time to get contracting done. There are data centers in EMEA and data privacy regulated there. So our customers now have the opportunity to take advantage of that. And last but not least is the advanced infrastructure and platform services. So we are leveraging our partnership with AWS in that they are just moving faster and delivering innovation in an accelerated fashion. So our customers can benefit from the massive infrastructure investments that AWS is making. And this also helps Workday. It helps us bypass the need for us to make these investments and focus on our core business of Workday and HCM and financials and a lot of our other products, especially Extend. So now this is all to say this is the infrastructure side of our partnership. On the next slide, we talk about the advantages of being able to have a Workday software subscription be transacted over the AWS marketplace. So we are privately listed on the AWS marketplace, but this is still available to our net new prospects and our existing customers today to be able to transact their Workday subscription through the AWS marketplace. And the benefits of this is that it helps our customers leverage their organization's AWS spend commitment agreements with AWS to transact their Workday subscription through the AWS marketplace. Additional benefits is it helps streamline procurement operations. It helps consolidate billing for all of your AWS workloads. And then also, it also helps you negotiate higher enterprise discount program agreements with AWS, that spend commitment agreements you guys have with AWS in the future. So that helps reduce the operating costs and the ROI. So that is exciting to be able to offer this to our customers. We have our public cloud migration strategy, moving everybody to public cloud. We have our availability of the AWS marketplace, and we continue to invest in our partnership. So for example, we're co-innovating across many different areas. One of the ones I wanted to highlight is our Workday Extend integration with AWS. Workday is expanding its native integrations with AWS to enable Workday developers and customers to apply AWS technologies to build custom applications. So customers can now use their Workday data along with AWS technologies such as AWS Lambda, Amazon EventBridge, Amazon Comprehend, Amazon S3, Amazon TextRack, and Amazon Translate. So that can be leveraged in our Workday Extend Pro product. You can build customized apps for finance and HR processes more securely and at scale. So we're excited about our partnership and doing a lot more co-innovation in the future. And with that, I'm going to pivot back to you, Human, to share a little bit about ERPA's migration journey with going on to Workday on AWS.
Great. Thank you, Francesca. So before I get into the details and our journey, I want to first set up an analogy for you. This entire process is very comparable. I'm sure some of you have recently moved from one house to another. When you move from one house to another, let's just assume in a perfect world, you have movers handle everything. So they come in, they move everything that exists in your house to the other house. But you still are responsible for change of address. You're responsible for going in and making sure electricity, gas, and everything is turned on when you move into the new place. Some of the utilities that are we rely on, of course, the internet nowadays. We can't live without Wi-Fi. So those are some of the things that are our responsibility, besides the change of address and potentially sending any financial vendor that has got your address to update to make sure they're pointing to the new location. And then we go through some of the growing pains to make sure in case there was anything missed there, you forgot that, you have to update that. So think about this in a similar manner. Workday does the heavy lifting where there's a copy of tenant and so forth. So you don't have to worry about retesting integration. So when I talk about testing and things like that, it's not going to be as heavy. But let's take a step back of how we approached it. So just like you, we were curious and we didn't know all the details. And the first thing we did is we logged the case, and Workday gave us some windows into the time frames that we can go ahead and select the migration based on our tenant and the products that we use, and the time that we have to test it. Before we selected that date, we looked at what our environment looks like. So the ERPA practice for Workday is 60 plus employees, but we have about 600 employees total at ERPA. We have an AWS business. We still, as a migration partner to cloud vendors, AWS and Workday, are managing an on-premise kind of application business that is really keeping the lights on as customers are looking at the option of cloud. And so that's another practice. So an AWS practice, a Workday practice, that on-premise practice, and then we have a wrapper around it for client-side support for anytime customers in these technologies need support on the client side, and that's got a lot of contractors. So when we took a step back and realized that we have 4 distinct practices, I'm a practice leader for one, we had to think about our stakeholders and how they're impacted and do an impact assessment to make sure we understand what's going on. And it started with doing an inventory of our integrations to figure out how, from a Workday standpoint, all the integrations are impacted, and figure out maybe from a payroll, banking, some of the critical ones. I was using the house analogy, same thing here. What are the ones that we want to make sure we take into account before we think about what the testing is and which integrations to test? So the change management involved really just someone like me leveraging the great content community has already provided to all customers in the Workday ecosystem that you have access to. We took that template and guidance and we customized it based on the integrations that we wanted to work with the specific vendors. And now let me kind of tell you what the testing involves. The testing is really, think about any time you have an integration that you're retrieving or delivering using an SFTP file, or anytime you're hitting an API, that is potentially you got a whitelist situation in there, and the vendor is responsible for whitelisting that IP address. So you have to make sure the future URL is changed with the right data center, and the vendor manages that. So that's the testing that we're talking about, making sure the integrations that are impacted again with an API and in an SFTP file that you're either receiving or pushing out are being thoroughly tested. And that requires coordination with vendors. So what we did is we created the templates, customized it, sent the vendors heads up before we started our window of 2 weeks that required us to do the testing. And what did Workday do? Workday did a copy of the entire tenant. So imagine a copy of my production tenant given to me where we can do this testing during the 2 weeks. But before that, we already had sent every vendor a templated email saying, hey, we need to make sure we confirm that you received this email and you are going to make the whitelist update with the new URL, point to the right data center, and you're confirming which date that is. We happen to migrate, and Workday gave us this, a migration date of October, and it was a weekend. So no vendor really does the change until Monday. So we had to make sure that we know and they confirmed. So that's the project management aspect of it. And then the continuous communication. So the change management is really knowing those stakeholders and continuously going ahead and updating the same email. So I would send an email to our practice and letting them know what URL is changing and what every user has to go update. So the next time they wake up on the date that we've made the migration, there are no surprises. And then the practice leader for our AWS practice had to do that. And then we had to figure out our contractors, what method and technology they're using. Some of them were using a third-party solution, and we had to make sure that that we are focusing on having them communicate there and acknowledging that they're updating their URL for any time entries into the system. So the change management is understanding your stakeholders, communicating with the vendors, getting confirmation from the vendors, and that required a project manager. So naturally, being a Workday practice, we put one of our senior integration folks on the testing aspect of it to be in charge of that. We put a project manager that managed the communication and we put sponsors on it to make sure in case a vendor didn't respond to us, our CFO, our HR leader would contact that. In the case of a banking solution, in the case of 401k, and in the case of recruiting for job boards, we really focused on any changes there and making sure the vendors that are doing background checks or potentially third-party vendors that we're putting at job boards with URL changes that will impact anybody that looks into that URL are being communicated ahead of time. So when the migration happened, really, we did the testing before in the input tenant that Workday had copied for us. And once the migration happened, we did a quick test to make sure that we have, and Workday gives you 2 weeks. So they keep that tenant open in case you're mimicking anything that hasn't happened. So we did a retest again to make sure that the URLs are updated as vendors communicated and confirmed with us. And that's really the entire process. I'll give you a perspective to the timeline that took and a little bit more detail in terms of the effort in a few minutes. But most importantly, we migrated and we never had any issues because of the way we approached the fact that we already had an inventory and the fact that we had 100% communication with the vendors ahead of time, and we started the change management early. And now moving on to exciting things that I'll talk about later. So what's your journey going to look like? Well, I mentioned that you have to create a case. Before we have to create a case, I suggest you do exactly what you're doing. Thank you. And I appreciate the fact you're taking the time to learn from our journey and maybe go ahead and think about what your discovery should look like and who you should think about in terms of change management and stakeholder alignment. In our case, the 600 employees, 150 of them were global, and we had 4 practices, and you may have multiple countries and multiple different things to think through. So we've created a discovery process to ask all the right questions. We can share that with you. Our sales director on the call can provide that information to you. It's really designed to think about what do you have in Workday from a SKU standpoint? What are the number of integrations? So we can isolate the integrations that we should think about. And if you listened earlier, 90% of your integrations, because most integrations will be impacted, will be needing to be going through a very quick test. And then most importantly, you have to make a request to get Workday to review everything and confirm when the date of the migration is. And there are a lot of customers that are doing this right now. So I encourage you to send that because it may take a couple of months before you actually pick your window, and it's a window that works for you. And I know some of you will have unique things such as different payrolls and different integrations that are running. So you have to make sure that you think through when you want to keep that date and make sure that once that date is selected and you get a copy of your tenant, the testing is pretty fast and furious, and you have to have the testing done so then you don't push that date out. So ultimately at ERPA, when the customer says, I want help for this, we have created a process and a package to go ahead and help with these migrations. So if we're involved, we'll work in tandem with the Workday team, as we've had several customers look at the migration and go through this process. So we stay close to it to pick the date, making sure if there's any change management we can get started, any templates we can customize and create for the vendors based on our discovery are done before that. So when the testing window starts, it's a very tactical, quick testing of all the updates, whitelisting, and the URL changes that need to take place. And then again, once you go live, which is the migration date, then you have the 2 weeks to clean up, and hopefully there will be no issues if we do all these steps right. So next, I think maybe getting a little bit perspective around these timeframes. For most customers, especially in the medium enterprise, thousands, 5,000 and below, or give or take, typically the number of integrations based on our experience are probably under 50, and the window that you get is 2 to 4 weeks for the testing and validation I talked about. The planning is variable. It depends. You may start planning. I've had a customer that I spoke with last week that just finally selected a date, but they said that thank you for sharing several times our story, and we get on phone calls and share our story with them, and it took 6 months for them to finally select a date. But they had to become comfortable. They had other projects, as we all do, and other priorities. So that's why it's variable. That starts before you select your date. So I encourage you to kind of think about that ahead of time. And then once you select the date, is figuring out if you have an internal team that knows exactly what to test, and you've already done your discovery of the integrations that need to be tested. And the day the move happens and post move, It's basically what I discussed around making sure that you retest now that the vendor is updated the whitelisting with the new URL, and we just want to confirm they did it, even though they said they did it, and we didn't have any issues. So if we didn't test, well, we would have been already ahead. But just to be safe, I'm sure all of us are going to do that minor testing to confirm things post migration. And from a level of effort, I already mentioned that to us, it was a change management exercise. And from a technical standpoint, the integration resource we had assigned to this was a senior integration resource that was basically responsible for the smoke testing that we did for the small URL changes pre and post migration. So a lot of the project manager activities were distributing templates, the emails to practice leaders like me, and encouraging us every week to change it, to send it, and making sure if somebody didn't acknowledge from our practice that they've received it for unique populations, we would call it out on our status calls. So we had 2 status calls every week, one with the vendors that would get on a phone call, and one with our internal stakeholders, our CFO, and the champions that were driving this. And then looking at what's completed, and literally every week, we would have kind of how many more integrations have been communicated, received, confirmed, where the changes are happening. And that's the functional team you want to have assigned you on this project. It's no more than that. So hopefully anybody that has that ability to navigate across the organization will be entitled to do that. So what's really exciting is we finished the year, we migrated in October, well, we ended up in December. And of course, we're proud to say we had some customers that did talk to us that we were servicing. There was a minor outage that affected some people, and I'm assuming some people on this call might have been affected in November, where we were with customers and like, how come you're not down? We had already migrated to this data center. So as Francesco alluded, the scale and the benefits of AWS already were great for us in terms of zero downtime for time tracking, recruiting, and some of the applications we use for global employees, as well as 2 months later, we upgraded to make sure that we have Extend Professional. And we are now working on solving a unique situation we have at ERPA. We have a lot of contractors with a different kind of skill each on resumes. It's a lot of resumes that our client-side team gathers for our client-side support team. They come with on-premise solutions, database skill sets, and the volume is heavy. So we are creating a unique Extend application using our own internal Extend team. And what's really exciting is the toolkits that are available to you or a developer like us or partners is pretty phenomenal. So now, as Francesco alluded, the native integration between AWS and ERPA is allowing our developer to use technologies that really simplify this app and make the entire process better by leveraging the Amazon technology, AWS technologies that solve translation, reading resumes, and then also badge assignment, looking at pictures. So what we're doing is leveraging technologies like S3, Lambda, Event Bridge to be able to, in the same environment that we're developing the Extend app, leverage that native integration that exists and pull those features in. We're still in development and have been working on this for the past 3 months. So it's going to be another few months before we go live, where it would solve a unique solution we have with going through parsing several resumes and embedding it into our unique hiring process and placing them based on the skills that are already in our Workday solution. So we're matching skills based on what's available, and then hopefully in a fast manner, putting them in the right job at the right place based on the customer demands. So this is something that we're really excited about as we move forward. And then I think one of the things I want to pass this to our regional sales director, Peter McKinney, who's excited to talk about the packages we've created for any customer that chooses to leverage us, as well as just to talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Human, and thanks. I see some questions coming through. Hopefully, you guys are getting some answers, and we're happy to. We're almost done with some of the content. We really want to engage with you guys in dialogue. So we'll get to that here in a moment. I wanted to highlight just a few things on this slide specifically, and it's really just as we've outlined, why ERPA and why we've been involved and our journey. We want to come right alongside in the spirit of partnership with Workday, but also with AWS specifically, and then with you, customers Workday. So to that point, you'll see that very first column, that Stratus package. This is really designed so that we can hopefully just be a point of knowledge and experience for customers that are asking this question for the first time and or hearing about this motion for the first time. So there's that little tag there at the bottom. That's a no charge option from ERPA to engage with you, answer questions. We're happy to set up a time and a session to meet with some of the team that worked on our project internally just to garner that experience, ask those questions, and begin that planning process, knowing that this is an initiative that organizations can deploy themselves. ERP is an example of that, but we're not the only example of that. And we've heard from other customers that just have a few questions. But then we've got several customers that we're working with in a more strategic motion surrounding this effort. So as they take a look at this public cloud migration, now they've had questions around extend. So now, hey, ERPA has our expertise, Humian clearly outlined our experience from our resourcing standpoint, their experience, many of which have both client side experience and consulting side. So a blend of knowledge from the customer, which we think is valuable when we have these broader conversations, these more strategic initiatives surrounding the public cloud migration. So we have packages to support that. I won't read each line item for you. You guys will receive this as a follow-up and content, but we will offer it up that we're happy to engage. I'm happy to have follow-up conversations with Brad and his team, or if you're outside of that region directly, just as an initial discovery to help you guys understand more into the timeline and what the effort looks like, and taking a look at maybe your integrations and making sure we understand what needs to be communicated with, where are the gotchas. And then if you would like for us to engage on a more strategic initiative surrounding this effort, thinking tenant enablement or roadmap, how does this impact what I have within existing projects in Workday? And do you have the support you need for those projects? We're happy to come alongside that conversation as a part of this effort. So we're not forcing these in our customers' inboxes, but they are available for additional support. Any questions, we're happy to engage as a follow-up to this. So I will pass it off to Human because we value getting into the questions and making sure you guys get what you want. So he'll do a quick summary and then we'll transition here shortly.
Thank you, Peter. So just in summary, Francesca did a great job of summarizing the wins. Of course, the zero downtime. If you use Workday Learning, Workday Recruiting, time tracking, and you have global populations, that's pretty powerful. The compliance and availability they go hand in hand together to me. As Francesca said, this is the direction Workday has decided to go. We get on a lot of calls and customer ask for the SOC 1, SOC 2 reports and all the compliance needed. But first of all, there's no fee and the backend is already handled. So community has great answers that we can provide on links. That's all done. That's very seamless. And the copy is already done by Workday and that's also seamless. Once you move, all those questions are probably better than Workday. Let's face it, we've all used the e-commerce solutions that Amazon provides for several years to purchase items. This is their business. They have all the technology. So it's the best of both worlds when you use AWS and the public cloud in this case. And the innovation thing basically is an extend use case that we talked about and what unique use cases you have and how some of those technologies combined together, what solutions you could find and the art of possible in terms of solving for unique problems. And then last but not least, don't underestimate the power of the marketplace. If you're already spending and you have a Workday subscription, why not put it in the marketplace and be able to combine with potential AWS spend that you have? And when you put the two technologies together, AWS gives you the credits that you can use for leveraging as you get discounts on future purchases, and the aggregate spend is really valuable. So it really optimizes that. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it to Jeff Miller. Thank you for your patience and your questions. We're going to go ahead and open it up.
Yeah, so this is the way it's going to work. I am going to empower all of you to unmute. Now, I will say I am so proud of you. You've been very engaged with the questions. The questions are coming in. Not everybody can see the questions. I can see them, and I'm assigning them in turn to our experts, and they've been very busy engaging with you. So thank you, first of all, for that. Now, what I'm going to do is I have just now allowed all of you to unmute. You are automatically muted, but if you would like to weigh in and ask a question or make a comment with any of our experts, and let me invite all of our panel to go ahead and come on camera so we can see your faces and know who it is that we're talking to. The question option is still available for you if you'd rather just type in your question. The chat's available. The chat is available for everybody to see. And I put some links in there. If you're going to Rising, we have a live session on this same topic. We would love for you to register, or someone from your organization that's going to Rising, send them that link. We would love to see you face to face and carry on this conversation in person, and maybe have a drink and talk more about the conversation. I've also put in a link to our next webinar coming up 2 weeks from today on the Workday Release 2 that's coming up in just a few weeks. I've also invited you to talk to Workday at Workday Rising. You know where to find them. ERPA is going to be at booth A27, and we would love to continue the conversation with you there. So I don't see any new questions coming in that I haven't assigned. I don't see any chat coming in, but if anybody wants to unmute and ask any of our panelists a question, go ahead and feel free to do that right now. Any brave souls?
Tim, maybe you could start, and while people are figuring out if there's a specific question, but maybe just a high-level overview of some of the gotchas, some of the lessons learned that we had as we went through our process. I know there's a question that related to that. I think that could be helpful. This is a starting place.
Yes, hello everyone. So as Human mentioned, I was the project manager on our internal move. And one of the questions that's been posed to me is, can I give some of the gotchas on the call? And I think from the project management or change management perspective, there was the planning piece of it, and knowing your vendors, I think, was one of the gotchas that we had, because some people you have a relationship with, it's a quick turnaround, you get answers back and forth, and we really didn't even need a phone call with the vendor. And then there were other vendors with more complex integrations and larger, really volume that they have to deal with, where they have to pencil you in to have the conversations on even answering some of the basic questions we had. So I think the gotcha there is just the planning of it from that change management perspective, is once you have that list of all of your integration vendors, planning that out and knowing that, hey, this is going to take a week just to get an answer versus a day or two. And so once we were able to get ahead of that, and that's where that planning time comes from up front. And what we tell many people is just have that list and kind of be thinking through that before you get into the set the date with Workday. Because if you can get a lot of that out of the way and understand what your vendor connections and time frame is going to be, it will make it all that much easier when you go into it.
Awesome. Let me, somebody's typed in a question. Let me invite our panel of experts to weigh in. What are the typical costs of this migration? Francesca, I think you're typing in an answer right now to someone else in the questions. You or Human, do you want to take this question? What are the typical costs of this migration? And Francesca, you are muted.
The Workday is no cost. That's the powerful part of it. The ERPA is, we would love to talk to you and not charge you for it if we just want to. We started this process today, but if you wanted to go ahead with the discovery and have us get Tim and I and potentially Rio, who runs our integrations and was heavily involved, our leader over there, to review some of your unique integrations. Once you complete that, we can give you our assessment. And again, we're here to help. And you have a chance to potentially leverage us if you wanted to say, you know what, after this, we want to leverage our resources. And then the cost would be variable. I could tell you for our practice, we tested everything before and after, and roughly it was 65 hours for us. We had 20 plus integrations. But that was the effort that we managed. But it's variable based on your number of integrations and the complexity of integrations. So it could be very little and it could be a little bit bigger. And that's where also the time is variable for testing. I said 2 to 4 weeks, typical. But there are larger customers, and if there's any customer here that has 150 integrations, then potentially the cost will be higher. So it's driven by the number of integrations, because we know what it takes to test each integration. So hopefully that is something that we would charge you, and then cases Peter would probably have special packages based on what you're leveraging from us. And we've had some customers of ours that are using their existing managed services. So we're not charging them, they're just using the contract they already have with us without any fees associated with them. So it's zero neutral cost to them.
Okay, we have a number of questions coming in through the question portal. So let me, Francesca, if I can ask you this one. I know you've answered one already related to this. When does this migration need to be done by? Within 25 or 25 and beyond? Could they delay it until 2026 or 2027?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and we get that question a lot. So Workday is not setting an end date like all customers need to migrate by X date, but they are working in waves. So they're reaching out, trying to do as many easy migrations as possible. So they're proactively reaching out to customers. But also, customers don't have to wait to be reached out by Workday to do a migration. They can initiate a request through a case portal submission. And Workday understands that sometimes this takes organizing internal resources at your company to try to figure out like what is the best timing for your business needs. So even if you initiate a request, you select the date, we understand that you might need to move that according to, your resources internally, or if you're going to work with someone like ERPA to get some guidance on integrations on how long the overall migration could take. So it's pretty flexible. We understand the business needs and we want to work with our customers to do what's best for them.
Great. More questions are coming in. Francesca, let me pitch this one to you. Sean, you might weigh in on this one. Is it a custom build within AWS infrastructure, or has a preset setup been put together in AWS for the tenant migration?
Sorry, can you repeat that question one
Yeah,
more
yeah,
time?
yeah. Is it a custom build within AWS infrastructure, or has a preset setup been put together in AWS for this tenant migration?
That's a tricky question. I'm trying to make sure I can answer it in the right way. Um, so when Workday migrates a customer, they it's pretty cookie cutter for our teams to do that. So they do certain movements of creating a test environment, a test tenant, and then implementation tenant and full production tenant. And so they go in waves to create that is repeatable and scalable across all of our customers. But I don't know that I would say it's a custom build within it. It's just a repeatable process that Workday has worked out, and we do that across all of our customers. I would say the nuances of it has to do with the integrations the customer might have, and so that's where advice from an ERPA or or from your internal resources and tech teams can help guide you on that.
Great.
So
Very
I
good.
don't know if there's a supplement that any of the ERPA team
Yeah.
also wants to do on that, having
The
gone
only
through it.
thing I would add is when they make the copy, it's a mirror image of your production environment, inclusive of integrations. So if the integration is already there, it's going to be a mirror image of it. The only thing that's not there is that whitelisting that's done by the vendor that we talked about, and if they're using an API and SFTP, that we have to go and force them to change and point to the new data center. Even community has a lot of great content uh, around what gets copied and what doesn't, and that's the only thing that you need to think about what I just mentioned. The rest of the technical jargon that I'm not familiar with will all carry over from your existing tenant to the test tenant they give you, and we use that for the testing. And Rio, if there's something that I misspoke on that you wanted to add, please go ahead, feel free.
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think coordinating and making sure you understand the endpoints, the gotchas, the complex integrations are probably the most important things to key in on. And every client knows what key integrations are they're most critical of and most thoughtful of that need to be considered.
I think
Awesome.
the last thing I wanted to add about is we have our Workday software on Workday Private Cloud, and now it's Workday on AWS. And so from a SKU parity standpoint, we'll be almost at 100% SKU parity come this September, because that's when, for example, our accounting SKU is the last SKU to come out to be 100% SKU parity on Workday on AWS. And so that's an important component to understand, that we're trying to make everything available, as you experience it on private cloud, now on public cloud, and also taking into account like you're getting all the benefits of public cloud as well.
Awesome. And I know, Sean, you wanted to weigh in. Sean is our ERPA director of our partnership with AWS, very knowledgeable about AWS. And Sean, I think you wanted to pile on there.
Yeah, just a quick add. Going back to that original question about custom build, it's kind of a tricky question in a way because everybody wants to pretend everything is custom. But the reality is that Workday does have a standard architectural template that complies with AWS best practices and well-architected framework. So that base layer template is there. But once we get above that template, then we lead into all the nuances that Francesca is speaking of, right? So it is customized above that layer for each Workday customer on AWS.
Awesome. Tim, I'm going to come to you next in a moment after I ask Francesca this question. Tim, I'm going to ask you about what was ERPA's most important factor leading to a successful migration. But Francesca, let me pitch to you. How many customers have migrated and how many are still to migrate? I think everybody wants to know that. Maybe you have a percentage that you could possibly offer.
We have a lot of customers today on Workday. So I believe like over 20,000 customers. We're a long way to getting everybody migrated. I would say we're just in the beginning stages of that. We're going to try to accelerate that migration strategy across all of our existing customers. And like I said, all net new customers, they're being deployed automatically on public cloud as well. So it's a little hard even to put a percentage because we're so early in our journey at this point in time.
That's fair.
But I would say we're trying to do as many easy migrations as possible, also trying to do complex ones as well, because that gives the gamut of experience across and being able to scale more and more over time.
Perfect. Thank you. Tim, unmute yourself if you wouldn't mind. What was the most critical factor for success of ERPA's tenant migration?
Yeah, I think for my perspective, it all comes down to that communications and change management piece. I'm not the technical guy, but I had to learn a little bit of what all this process is. My role was really to make sure that people were aligned with internal communications, like Human mentioned, the practice leaders of each of our verticals being aware of what we were doing, when we were doing it. We had things like, a notification and announcement several times on our Workday homepage. You can change the banner on there to let people know, hey, what's coming. So I kind of took like a three-prong approach to it, where we tell them what's coming, we tell them it's coming again, and then we tell them right before that it's coming again. That was really successful, I think, just in the communications piece of it and the change management piece of getting with our vendors. So we had those internal communications that were pretty dialed in and repetitive. People, if they didn't know it was coming, it was, I don't think by any lack of our effort there. On the Workday side, working with the lead person there in the case, through a Workday case, and monitoring and managing all of those moves. She was excellent. So great partnership with Workday. And then the other issue is just working with the vendors. Like I mentioned, having that communication up front. I don't know. I think we were one of the first. So vendors were unaware maybe of some of these changes that were happening. Now, as Francesca mentioned, there's been more and more customers. Some of our vendors probably now are like, oh, okay, another customer is doing this. So, it's coming easier for them. But I think the triad there of communications between us and internally with the vendors and with Workday were the keys to success.
I'm going to keep going with you here, Tim. We've got about 4 or 5 more questions. We got 10 minutes left in our time. Speaking of vendors, Tim, was there a generic template that you provided to the vendors with the details they would need to update their end of the integrations? What type of information was needed to provide to them other than the IP addresses and new URLs?
Yeah, great question. And the answer is yes. We came up with a template for email. We sent it to all of the vendors. We included our internal business owners of those integrations, obviously. So if Jeff, if you're a benefits person, you were working with a vendor, we would include you in that. The email would come to you from your business partner with us on copy, just as we're all involved. And those questions were directly related to, hey, here's our new URL. These are the IP addresses. Do you whitelist? So a lot of stuff that could be answered within the email. Is there any, concerns with the timing of this? How much lead time do you need? Will this be reassigned? Those are the types of questions that were in that template, so we could manage that out and plan for any of those longer timeframes. But it's pretty much the URL and IP address and any Q&A that we would need to have through that email in lieu of a call. And many times it was really quick and easy answer back and forth.
Very, very helpful. Thanks for that detail. Human, does ERPA have experience with client moves to Google or only AWS?
So as Francesco alluded, because GCP, Google is a little bit later, and AWS, let's face it, several years ago, certain parts of the world have been on the AWS tenant already. Like there's Western Canada that 5 years ago, for compliance reasons, been any net new customer. So there's more experience there. The answer is we're an AWS partner, so we won't promote GCP, but that doesn't mean that if a customer of ours that's under contract needs help, we are obliged to make sure that we service them. So if we have a customer, potentially a particular retailer of ours right now, that doesn't have any interest of the three-letter word in this case, and they just don't want to work because it's a competitor to them, we are more than glad under contract to use the hours to help them with the same process we just mentioned. And all it is the different URL change. So we do everything we just talked about, and it will be a different URL change in this case. It's not practical for us to promote, so Sean doesn't have to get any phone calls from AWS going, you're investing in all the great products of ours, then why is it that you're promoting them? We're very focused on AWS and Workday, and that's our cloud optimization, kind of a future.
Thank you. And Francesca, I did assign a question to you just now. I think folks are just kind of curious how far along Workday is with their customers making this migration. I think it's safe to say it's relatively early days, but I did have one question that came in, Francesca, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and answering this one. Will Workday ever stop supporting the private cloud?
It's going to be a while until Workday stops supporting. I've asked this question myself to our product and technology teams. So they are not going to be sharing a date yet. So you can expect it's going to be several years off at the point in time when they decide to stop supporting.
Very good. Okay. Tim, follow-up question for you, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and talk to us. They're wanting to know if you would share the email template by chance with anyone. Is that a free giveaway or is that a work? Peter?
No, I think, we're happy. I mean, there's no smoke and mirrors here. We're happy to engage in conversation and equip you guys. So if that's a value to you, then we're happy to meet. We would love the opportunity to understand, kind of the process that you guys are going on, and engage in that way, and at least have the conversation. But certainly, I don't see a concern in providing that as a template to customers that need to get started on the planning side.
Awesome. Keep putting your questions in, or I think I saw somebody at one point raise their hand if you want to come off of mute and talk to us. I do want to remind you in the chat, if you go to the top right icon where there's a couple of little window bubbles, there's the chat. I put a couple of links in there for everyone who's joined us today. One, we are doing a session at Workday Rising in person on this very topic and would love to continue that conversation with you there. And I think Francesca is also going to be there for that session so that she can have a conversation with you. So if you really want to get these experts together in person and continue to ask these questions, that's a great place that we can meet up. It's Wednesday morning session, and the link directly to that session registration is in the chat for you, either for you to register or for you to send to a member of your team who's attending Rising next month. And then also we do have another webinar coming up in 2 weeks on the release, and we would love for you to register for that as well before you log off today. I don't see any more questions coming in. Great information and great conversation, by the way. You guys, I love the engagement. Obviously, there's a high level of interest in this topic. And so your questions are spot on. And I'm really happy that you're all thinking about it, thinking about the timing, thinking about the detail, thinking about the effort, of course, thinking about the cost. These are all very relevant and great questions. And I'm so happy that we've got this team together to help answer this. Got some thank yous in the questions.
I say one thing, if anybody has a similar kind of question, would you share? We already said it, but I'm going to say ERPA stands for empathy, responsibility, passion, agility. We have a responsibility to help the ecosystem as a Workday partner and customer. So we'll get on the call and invest in that. And we think if we do that, that's the right thing to do. And you'll remember ERPA. And then in the future, if you had a new module, new implementation, new AMS partner consideration, or whatever else that you think you can rely on us, hopefully you'll come back to us. So this is an investment we'll make because it's important for us to support Workday as they've selected us in this journey.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, team. Thanks to all of you who joined us today. We hope this was helpful information. As promised, I've dropped a couple of links in the chat. Again, you're going to receive an email in a few business days with links to this recording and to the slide deck. You're also going to receive an email survey right after the conclusion of this webinar. We would love it if you take 45 seconds to complete that survey. And I think that's it for now. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to our panel of experts, and thanks to all of you who joined us today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.